So now we are at module 4, the game plan. And so your goal is going to be the vision you identified through each module. So as part of the process, you identified what is going well, what is a clear goal, and what themes emerge for you in the process. So in this last module, you will take a moment to reflect and identify a few actionable steps that you can take to achieve the goals that have emerged for you that you've identified. So let's take some time again to revisit. These are the course learning outcomes. The course learning outcomes are: number 1, learners will be able to explain how equity-focused professional learning impacts student success. The second one is learners will identify and organize equity considerations relating to the institution, program assessment, campus culture, data, and the community into an actionable plan. And the last course outcome is learners will be able to employ strategic actions to integrate equity into professional learning activities. So in this module, you will have the opportunity to draft measurable goals based on the 2 or 3 areas that you selected. So remember, in module 3, I took some time to just go through one area of impact and then how to begin to analyze or prioritize that area as something that I want to begin to draft a goal for. But you can pick more than one area. The next thing you will do in this module is revisit some key components of professional learning. So remember, we will talk again about key constituents, any funding sources, some short-term actions, and potential challenges. And then you will also have the opportunity to identify next steps in designing your own professional learning program. So remember, we now will just kind of go through what we've done so far. So on this next slide, we have, in module 1, we discuss equity and equity-mindedness, the history of professional learning, and considerations for integrating equity in the professional learning program. In module 2, we discuss 6 areas that impact professional learning, and we use a matrix tool to analyze our professional learning program. In module 3, we looked at the impact of equity-focused professional learning on student success, Kirkpatrick's levels for evaluation, and we identified stakeholders to gather information from, and we even went a little bit more in depth about ways to conduct that investigation. So now in module 4, we will draft measurable goals, identify those key stakeholders, which was also something you could have done at the end of module 3 in the discussion forum, and then talk about funding sources, short-term actions, and potential challenges in the creation of your action plan. So where do we start with drafting those goals? So we rely on the matrix in which we have documented our observation and needs of our institution. So you may notice that the blank goals section under each area of impact. And so this can be used as a workspace to draft your goals. And so what we'll do is take each quadrant individually and draft a goal that addresses the need underneath it. So for this exercise, choose the area of impact that requires the most attention. And keep in mind that you should draft the goals for all areas of impact. So if you can take a moment to access the matrix tool from module 2, your draft goals, and then download a copy from your module materials for the module 3 and 4 draft template. So now we're going to draft our goals. So at this point, review your matrix responses and identify which areas of impact are your immediate priority. You may even want to write out a plan with a timeline to determine which areas of impact need to be addressed by when. So for this next exercise, we will identify the top area of impact and draft some goals for your program. So here again, based on the Woods College area, the area of impact is the institution. So here you see from that matrix that you used in module 2, we can see, again, we have the same table that looks at the institution as the area of impact and has the prompts for employee improvement, instructional improvement, and then student improvement. So based on Woods College, the area of impact, was the institution that we also reviewed in Module 3. And so how can we revisit those prompts? So we see here, we have sourced information from that Woods College case study, and then we see that we have those blank goals. So now if you look at that same worksheet, you'll see that you have an area of impact, and it says, what is your area? And then you also have a blank slate, right? So you can draft your goals in this area. So take a moment and you can pause the video to review your matrix and your answers. So if you took a moment to pause the video and now you're returning back and you have accessed that document, and then you've included in that document some draft goals. So what I would like to do now is take a moment to also just share some draft goals that could be created from the institution using the Woods College case study. So here we have in this first column, a draft goal that says implement a new funding process to ensure programs can reach the PL goals in the institutional strategic plan. So for instructional, we're looking at discerning and curate culturally relevant teaching practices for future professional learning offerings. And then for student improvement, implement culturally relevant teaching practices into professional learning offerings and monitor student success outcomes. So these are pretty broad goals. And what you may notice is that because Woods has a very diverse student population, we could use this information about course success rates and identify what student groups are not doing well. So also we can look at the employee demographics, and we notice that they may not be as diverse as the student demographics. So therefore, culturally responsive practices could increase awareness about how employees can support diverse students inside or outside of the classroom. So here we can say, here's a broad goal, and that goal could be intentionally connect and curate PL or professional learning offerings that infuse race-conscious, culturally relevant, and equity-focused activities. So even though that is a very broad goal, we understand that by stating this goal, we're very specific about being intentional to create professional learning that is race-conscious, culturally relevant, and equity-focused. And so even though we can identify specific professional learning topics that fall within the scope of that goal, we understand that by creating specific language that centers equity, culturally responsive teaching, or culturally relevant practices and race consciousness, we know that we can cover different areas that center the diverse experiences of our students and also enforce inclusion. So now that we have this broad goal that we've introduced, let's talk about the action plan. So there's a blank matrix worksheet to fill in your goals. And so you had an opportunity to access that. And we looked at how that worksheet looks, where it just basically has a row for institution. And then again, it has the same matrix columns, employee improvement, instructional improvement, and then student improvement. So now once you filled in those goals, and the example that we just did was one for institution, you can start drafting your action plan. So your action plan should identify actionable steps to achieve your goals. And so for this exercise, choose one goal from your matrix. Keep in mind that you should do this for every goal on your matrix when developing your professional learning program. So you could take a moment to pause and access that document, and then we will continue to go through each column and discuss how you would add information or look for information and begin to build out that goal. So you can pause for a moment, and then we'll return and take some time to start to fill out that action plan. So if you notice on the worksheet, it has an outline about how to view each step. And so what I'll do on the next collection of slides is just go through each column. So in column 1, it asks the question, are your goals measurable? So think about the draft goal that you've created, and if the goal that you've drafted answers some of these questions. Who is involved? What do you want to accomplish? And then where, if there's a location. Establish a time frame. Identify requirements and constraints, and then why. Any specific reason, purpose, or benefit for accomplishing the goal. And I know that may sound like a lot to include in one or two statements, but really this framework is designed from a SMART goal. And a SMART goal framework or template is what we're using to flesh out your goals, to make sure that they're measurable, that they're feasible within a certain amount of time, and that they're specific so that you know if you've achieved that goal because you've been very specific about how you want to meet that or address that goal. So that's column one. So now when we go into this next slide, what we see here is that draft goal from the matrix, right? And so it's intentionally connect and curate professional learning offerings that infuse race conscious, culturally relevant, and equity focused activities. So that's the example of our first goal. Honestly, it does not specifically answer all of those questions, right? So let's continue so that we can build that goal out. So in column two, let's think about who can support, co-lead, fund, or advocate for this professional learning programming. So remember, college campuses can use quantitative and qualitative data. They can identify their partners, supporters, and advocates for the program. And then what are some of the campus governing bodies that could be involved in supporting this goal? So who can support? So here we've listed a large amount of groups, right? And remember, Long Beach City College also identified 7 groups that were in collaboration to design the cultural curriculum audit. So think about how that collaboration could move this program forward, because you have the support, the buy-in, and the influence from all these different important voices within the campus community. So here we see that we have faculty leads from governance all the way to chairs, to committees, and just, you know, faculty leaders within their own departments. We see the classified leaders, administrators, the vice president of instruction, or just the executive leadership, the president, the other vice presidents, the president's cabinet, professional learning department, the associated student body, and then the Office of Institutional Effectiveness. So now column 3. So what are some short, medium, or long-term actions that need to be implemented? So you can list as many as you like, and then assign them short, medium, or long-term, right? So based on your campus climate, based on where your starting point is. And I also like to just encourage, if you have an end time or an end time frame in mind, whether that's in a 1 year or 2 or 3 years, then design with the end in mind, and you can work backwards from that timeline. And that would sometimes just allow you to really break up what that short, medium, or long-term, you know, checkpoints are for you. And so thinking about if this is a year from now or 2 years from now, then work backwards by identifying key dates or timeframes that you want to achieve, or certain points that you want to be at by moving towards that goal. So here we see action steps: draft a proposed plan, include a summary, audience format, etc. What are some deliverables? What is the budget? What is the follow-up? What is the timeline, as I stated, right? Using maybe backwards design. And then identify designers or consultants to develop the program curriculum. So now here we are at column 4. So what type of funding will you need to implement and sustain the program? So remember, we talked a little bit about function and how function can be, number one, just what or how the program provides or creates the institute, events, workshops, conferences, and things of that sort. But remember that the program also needs to have an operating budget, funding for activities, a physical space, classified professional as well as instructional staff to support that space. And then supplies, materials, and technology are also important in being able to support the program and sustain it. So here in resources needed, let's say it's a startup, right? Let's say $50,000. I mean, it probably would cost a little more than that, but let's just say it's $50,000. And then whatever funding or how much money you think it may need to be to start. Designers, consultants, marketing, incentives for participants. So in some programming, at some institutions, there may be ways to incentivize through, in some community colleges, they use something called an extended service credit, which allows them to invest in faculty, part-time or full-time, who have taken professional learning or as an institute, maybe for a week long or longer. Maybe sometimes it's a 4-week program. And for classified professionals or other groups, it may be different ways that they can incentivize the programming. And so that's something to look at on ways that you can do that. So you're investing in them and their learning, and then also showing that you see value in their work and their dedication to improving their education, professional practice, and also that you are willing to make that investment. So create a separate budget projection for the next 2 to 3 years to sustain the professional learning program. One of the things that we talked about in the earlier module about professional learning versus professional development, and sometimes professional development had a characteristic of being one-time offerings or just here and there, right? And so we want to remember that professional learning is seen as something that's sustained over time and is ongoing. And so when you think about a program, setting up a projected budget for some of the things that I mentioned, but also for being able to incentivize, to also inviting, outside consultants, looking at space, looking at other ways to support faculty, to support classified professionals, administrators, right? And maybe even engaging with students and how you want to be able to do that within a time frame of 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years. And how much would that cost the program to be able to do that effectively and within, each year, each phase of that unfolding from year to year. And so looking at that would help strengthen not only your vision, but your ability to identify how you want to unfold this professional learning program in a way that you are looking at the sustainability of it, as well as how you are looking at what it will cost year to year and what type of investment the institution can make so that it is continued, throughout, beyond 3 years, but also through that 3-year timeline. So column 5. So are there any potential challenges that will arise? And so thinking about those challenges. And so I love to just talk through this sometimes, right? Because, it's nice to just think, this is my goal, and then there's a straight path to this goal, to the end of this goal. And we know that sometimes things may arise. Sometimes there's policies within the institution. Sometimes there's other things that come up that may take time. It could delay the process from unfolding in a timeline that you prefer. And so just thinking about, if those challenges were to arise, what are some potential solutions that you can set in place or set in motion, or that you can think of as setting some contingency plans so that things arise, you don't have to completely stop your actionable steps, right? So you have a thoughtful approach to building a sustainable program that is equity minded. And so just thinking through some potential challenges that may arise, some contingencies that you can put in place if they arise, and then how you can continue to work towards achieving the goals that you've set. So how does that look? So here we have potential challenges. So we, I don't know about your institution, but I have definitely encountered some challenges with participation on all levels, right? And looking at budget allocations year to year, even though we do a budget projection, sometimes we don't always receive the amount of funding that we need, but still always being hopeful and optimistic and showing how your goals match the institution or aligned to the institutional goals, how they're aligned to the program plan, and then how those basically articulate how you're supporting student success and how it in turn adds value to the institution. And so outlining some deliverables for each constituent group. So we know that usually different groups have different needs as it relates to their professional learning. And so how do we institutionally address the goals, but then are able to personalize so the professional learning to the needs of those different campus constituents, and then following up, right? So when we looked at Kirkpatrick's level of evaluation, we've been successful at my institution in implementing level 1, but we've struggled a little bit with level 2, and we have not gone into level 3 or 4. But I believe that in the planning process, looking at as a challenge, but then designing some solutions around how you still want to achieve that level 4 evaluation, but maybe looking at how you can take steps towards that year to year and begin to assess the impact of professional learning over a long period of time, maybe in a 3-year timeline. And so here we are in revising your draft goal into a SMART goal. And so the way that we want to just look at that SMART goal is make sure there is a specific timeline. We want to talk about how or what specific examples. We want to be specific about what we're doing in that time frame, and then how we're going to assess if we've achieved that goal by that date, right? And so here I've added on that action planning sheet a sample template. So if you want to look at your draft goal and then look at this sample template and see what measurable specific information you can do to strengthen your goal in a way that it reflects some specific measurable actionable steps that you can take to achieve it. And so I'll just take a moment you can just pause this part of the video and then begin to just revisit your draft goal and then look at how you want to use the template to maybe revise your goal to have some other specific information in it. So we've had a moment to look at that SMART goal template. And the reason that I like to use those SMART goal templates is because, again, as I stated before, it's specific, so it targets a particular area for improvement. It's measurable, and it quantifies or suggests progress metrics. It's achievable, so you want to make sure that you can achieve your goals within the resources that you've identified, and then within the timeline, and it's realistic. So it's not going to take too long, meaning it won't take more than, hopefully 2 to 3 years. But then it also allows you to look at checkpoints to see what you have achieved throughout the progression through those those short, medium, and long-term steps that you've identified. And so when we go on to looking at what the outcome of that SMART goal is for this particular draft is by June 2023, we will request $50,000 to cover the cost for a Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Institute for faculty, classified professionals, and administrators to increase the amount of participation in race-conscious, culturally relevant, and equity-focused content through a workshop series, and we will use a pre- and post-evaluation to assess the learning experience. And so one of the things that is not included on this action planning sheet is a bonus question, and that is the opportunity to revisit the Kirkpatrick's 4 levels of training evaluation, review the goals that you set, and then identify which level evaluation you can use to measure the progress of the goal that you state. So once you've identified what professional learning program you'll institute and then how you will assess what the learning experiences are of the constituents that participated. And so that's just a bonus question. So we did not add it here, but you can take some time to incorporate it in your overall action planning. So remember that having the program ideas, the funding, and the best practices are not effective unless it is embedded into the institution. So I just want to remind you that identifying alignment between the professional learning program goals and the institution articulates a clear vision for student success. And so equity-focused professional learning program is an opportunity to relate how professional learning serves that purpose or that clear vision inside the classroom or outside of the classroom. Let's take a moment. We did take some time to specifically go through one goal. And as part of the action planning, you can take some time to do this on your own, or you can even start the process and then go engage with your key stakeholders, your committee, your task force, your work group, and begin to ask that group to just help you to work through some of these things that you've assessed and identified as areas that you want to focus on or prioritize in terms of your planning process. And so once you do that, you have the opportunity to strengthen just some of the great things that you're probably already doing that and integrate equity. And then, so this is just an opportunity to broaden that lens of equity and to create equity as part of a foundation of the professional learning program across, all learning activities, so that it is not a separate activity that you do once a year, but in all the programming, it identifies equity, equity mindedness, and diversity or inclusion practices, culturally responsive practice, race consciousness into everything. Looking at the potential challenges and solutions, it can be some challenges when you're dealing within the culture of an institution. Sometimes there are structural and systemic, issues that can arise that feel like they could thwart the action plan, but please don't feel discouraged, right? It's an opportunity for you to begin to catalyze change within your institution, to address some inequitable policies as it relates to professional learning or even student success, right? Because we are in a position to work towards supporting student success indirectly through teaching and learning opportunities that bring awareness to the individuals that participate about how to be culturally responsive, how to be equity minded, how to broaden their lens, how to critically reflect, how to look at structural racialization and its impact on our students, how to have an asset-based mindset, right? So all of these things are opportunities for us to introduce these concepts and then begin to build them and weave them into the culture of the institution. So with that said, Napoleon Hill said that the reason that some people fail is because they fail to identify a goal and create a plan. And so identifying challenges can provide the foresight to create a plan or proposal that addresses challenges, identifies solution, and provides a thoughtful approach to building a sustainable program that is equity minded. And so I hope that you were able to use the tools, the content, and the activities as a resource to strengthen your program. And so thank you so much for taking this course. And please check the schedule for upcoming live sessions for us to discuss, learn, and ways to improve our practices. So I will lead those live sessions, and I look forward to the opportunity to meet you and to just talk with you and just share and learn about your experiences, and then learn ways to even add and strengthen this course so that it can be impactful and meaningful for anyone that decides to take it and to put it within their institutional practice. So with that said, I just wanted to share a few closing words. And so I really love bell hooks. And so I quote her in this particular closing. And I hope that if you are familiar with her, you'll understand why I've selected her as someone to close with and to quote. But also, if you have not had the opportunity to read some of her work, I encourage and recommend that you take some time to look her up and to maybe watch some of her videos or look at some of her recent publications. She's an amazing scholar. So equity is a journey. And equity through the lens of bell hooks emphasize the self-actualization journey of the instructor or education professional to expand their knowledge and create practices that engage students, providing them with ways of knowing that enhance their capacity to live fully and deeply. And so professional learning is a bridge to facilitate change. So we can collectively support our communities by contributing, collaborating, and taking action to invest in our learning that will lead to reducing equity gaps, affirming our students, and seeing tangible student success through course completion. So remember, equity is a journey that begins with you. And so as you go away from this course, I hope that you can take some of the tools and that you can apply them to your daily work. And please feel free to reach out to me to share some of your discoveries, to even share some of your critiques about the course so that I can improve upon it as well as learn from all of you. And so have a wonderful planning time, and I look forward to learning about all the discoveries and changes that you were able to manifest as a result of your planning process. So thank you.